Rolling. Okay, it is great to see you all on this lovely Monday morning, December 14th, 2020. Unbelievable. My, how time flies when you're having fun, I will say. All right, so it's time to jump in. The Torah portion this week. The Torah portion this week is Miketz. I'm going to share my screen with you. We're going to get rolling with this incredible story of Joseph. So as we left it last week, oh, Donna, your computer.
What? Yeah, I know. Hopefully it all should be working tomorrow.
I hope so. Got to get you back in business.
It's been a challenge.
All right. Well, hopefully there will be a Hanukkah miracle. Get you back online over there. All right. So
exactly.
So last week when we left off, so Joseph was not only sold as a slave to Egypt, he was framed for a crime that he didn't commit, and he was languishing in an ancient Egyptian prison, and he was kind of, being successful and doing his thing and being all charismatic and doing the Joseph thing. But what's germane to our conversation is the fact that he had interpreted the dreams of the butler and the baker successfully, and the butler had been freed from prison. And now, 2 years later, the narrative continues. This is Miketz. Let's begin. Chapter 41 of Genesis, verse number 1. It came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh was dreaming. So many dreams. Joseph dreams, the butler dreams, the baker dreams, Pharaoh dreams. Everyone's having a cholam. Everyone's dreaming. So Pharaoh was dreaming, and behold, he was standing by the Nile. And behold, from the Nile were coming up 7 cows of handsome appearance and robust flesh, and they pastured in the marshland. And behold, 7 other cows were coming up after them from the Nile, of ugly appearance and lean of flesh. And they stood beside the cows which were on the Nile bank. So what you have here is a dream with 7 healthy cows and 7 very thin cows, and the cows of ugly appearance, the thin cows and lean of flesh, devoured the 7 cows that were of handsome appearance and healthy. Then Pharaoh awoke. So you have these 7 robust cows, 7 emaciated cows, and the emaciated cows consume the healthy cows. Wow, what a dream. Verse 5, and Pharaoh fell asleep again. And he fell asleep and dreamed again. And behold, 7 ears of grain were growing on one stalk, healthy and good. And behold, 7 ears of grain, thin and beaten by the east wind, were growing up after them. And the thin ears of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy and full ears of grain. Then Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So Pharaoh has 2 similar dreams, one with cows and one with ears of grain. The cows, you have the big cows, the little cows, and the little cows are eating the big cows, the ears of grain, the healthy ears, the unhealthy ears, and the unhealthy ones are eating the healthy ears of grain. So he had 2 dreams. He woke up in between, similar themes, and Pharaoh is disturbed by the dreams, as the Torah tells us right here in verse number 8. Now it came to pass in the morning that Pharaoh's spirit was troubled. Now, why was he troubled? He was troubled, according to our sages, according to the commentaries of the Torah, because he sensed that these were not just random dreams, random dreams that could be discarded, but these held some prophetic visions and messages for him. And he was troubled by the fact that he didn't understand what it meant. So he sent, listen to what he does. So Pharaoh sent and called all the necromancers of Egypt and all its sages. Now, what are necromancers? I don't know the exact meaning of that. I can't give you a Webster's dictionary definition, but I will tell you it means kind of the sorcerers, those that practice, some sort of magical consultations, if you will. So he called them. He called all the fortune tellers and the palm readers and etc. And all the sages, all the wise men of Egypt. And Pharaoh related to them his dream, but no one interpreted them for Pharaoh. By the way, it's not that he didn't get an interpretation. No one interpreted them accurately for Pharaoh. In other words, when each one offered up their idea of what the dreams meant, none of those offerings resonated for Pharaoh. That's what it means that no one interpreted them for Pharaoh. Not that no one offered an interpretation, but no one hit the nail on the head. No one got it right. There was no interpretation that he got from all of his wise people, from all of the sorcerers and the spiritual, experts in Egypt. None gave him an answer or an interpretation that resonated with him. Verse number 9. Now the chief cupbearer spoke with Pharaoh, the butler, the fellow who had been in the prison 2 years ago with Joseph, saying, I call to mind my fault today. What does that mean in English? I remember my mistake. Right? Pharaoh was angry with his servants, and he put me in prison in the house of the chief slaughterer, me and the chief baker. Remember, the butler and the baker, they were hanging out together in prison. And we dreamed a dream on the same night, I and he, each one according to the interpretation of his dream we dreamed. And there with us in the prison was a Hebrew lad, a slave of the chief slaughterer. And we told him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. For each of us, he interpreted according to his dream. In other words, he didn't just give us an interpretation, but he got it right. He got it right. It resonated. And even in actuality, it came true. And it came to pass that just as he had interpreted, so it was. Me, he, Pharaoh, restored to my position, and him, the baker, he, Pharaoh, hanged. Basically, the butler is now approaching Pharaoh. And he says, I recall my shame. I recall my mistake. I recall my error. I recall my indiscretion. A few years ago, I did something wrong. Pharaoh, you threw me into prison. He speaks to Pharaoh in third person. Pharaoh threw me into prison. And there I met the young guy, and me and the baker had dreams, and he interpreted them, and it was right. Pharaoh restored me to my position, and the other guy was executed. So I know a guy. That's what he's trying to tell Pharaoh. I know a guy who does dreams. So what happens, verse 14? So Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they rushed him from the dungeon. And he shaved and changed his clothes, and he then came to Pharaoh. He basically got spruced up, ready to go, and he stood before Pharaoh. Of course, this is the life-changing event, the interview with Pharaoh that literally changes his life, and it's all due, at least on the ground, to the butler remembering the dream that Joseph had interpreted for him when he had a troubling dream and was having a bad day. All right, again, what I said last week, when you're having a bad day, so it's not you. When one is having a bad day, it's our obligation to help them. We never know. First of all, it's right. It's the right thing to do. Furthermore, we never know the effect of even one good morning, how you doing? You don't look happy today. What's wrong? We can't even fathom, can't even imagine the effect that that could have. Okay, so give me 1 second. Okay, now let's get back to one idea that we talked about over here. And that is this notion that Pharaoh is consulting all of the sorcerers of Egypt and no one is giving him a good answer. Take a look at Rashi. I toggled up Rashi. Take a look at what Rashi says. Here you go. Oh, here we go. By the way, it says that Pharaoh was troubled. He was agitated. So the word is vatipa'im in Hebrew. Onkelos renders it that his spirit was agitated, knocking within him like a bell. So think about a bell that has that little, I don't know what it's called, like the little thing inside the bell. So like it knocks and agitates the bell to make the noise. So he was agitated, he was disturbed. Concerning Nebuchadnezzar, however, Rashi says, scripture says, in his spirit was agitated, vatitpaim. So here it says vatitpaim, there it says vatitpaim. There are two reasons for this agitation by Nebuchadnezzar: forgetting the dream and ignorance of its interpretation. So when it came to Nebuchadnezzar, he was doubly agitated because he forgot the dream and the interpretation. Here, Pharaoh knew the dream, just didn't know the interpretation. Okay, let's talk about the necromancers. Who are the necromancers of Egypt? Rashi explains, those who would arouse themselves with the bones of the dead. Interesting. So that they would be able to inquire of the bones. They would use, I guess, bones of deceased skeletons to somehow be able to see things or know things. Okay, let's do the next one. But no one interpreted them for Pharaoh. So as Rashi says, and I quoted this before, they did interpret them, the dreams, but not for Pharaoh. In other words, they gave interpretations, but none that resonated with the guy who was asking for the interpretation. For their voice did not reach his ear, and he had no satisfaction from their interpretation. For they said, for example, Rashi cites one example of what his wise people said. You will beget 7 daughters, and you will bury 7 daughters. They were just pulling stuff out of their sleeves. They were like, oh, you're going to have 7 daughters, and then you're going to bury them. God forbid. So they were making up stuff. So either way, the bottom line is, at this point, he hears about Joseph, and let's read about the next part of the story as Joseph is standing before Pharaoh and what happens next. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. Genesis chapter 41, verse 15, second reading. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, this is the first time they're meeting. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter for it. But I've heard it said of you that you understand the dream to interpret it. They say about you, says Pharaoh, that you know how to interpret dreams, Joseph. Is that true? And Joseph replied to Pharaoh, saying, not I. God will give an answer that will bring peace to Pharaoh. Look at that. Look at that. Here he has the opportunity to say, yes, I do know how to interpret a dream, but he doesn't take the bait. He says, it's not me, it's Hashem, it's God that has the answers. And perhaps God will give through me an answer that resonates to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, all right, here's the dream. In my dream number 1, behold, I was standing, and now we have the dreams again. Behold, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, and behold, 7 cows of robust flesh and handsome form were ascending from the Nile, and they pastured in the marshland. And behold, 7 other cows were ascending after them, emaciated in a very ugly form and with meager flesh. I have not seen such ugly ones throughout the entire land of Egypt. Like, these were so thin and emaciated, never seen them before. And the meager and ugly cows devoured the first 7 healthy cows. Listen to this, another detail. And the healthy cows went inside them, the thin cows, but it was not known that they had gone inside of them, for their appearance was as ugly as in the beginning. In other words, the little cows swallowed the big cows, but didn't get any bigger in the process. They remained skinny. Then I awoke. That was dream 1. Then I saw in my dream number 2, and behold, 7 ears of grain were growing on one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears of grain, hard and thin and beaten by the east wind, were growing up after them. And the thin ears of grain swallowed up the 7 good ears of grain. I told the necromancers, but no one tells me its meaning. All right, here we go. Joseph begins interpreting. Verse 25, and Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dream is one. What God is doing, he has told Pharaoh. Listen to this intro. Listen to this confident, this is like a rock star, I got this intro to the interpretation. He says, number 1, you had 2 dreams, same dream. It's one dream. It's one message. You're not getting 2 messages. You're getting one single message from both dreams. And this dream is not, oh, you're going to have children and you're going to bury the children, God forbid. No. God is giving you a message of national importance. God is telling you, God is doing what God is doing. He has told Pharaoh. God is letting you know, Pharaoh, what his plan is for the country, really for the world, for the region. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears of grain are 7 years. It's one dream. So the good cows and the good ears of grain, they all refer to 7 years. It's the same message. And the 7 meager and ugly cows coming up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears of grain beaten by the east wind will be 7 years of famine. So again, the good cows and the good ears of grain are one. The 7 ugly cows and the 7 empty ears of grain are also one. 7 years and 7 years. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. It is this matter that I have spoken to Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he has shown Pharaoh. God is letting you into the secret of what is in store for the world and the economy, etc. Behold, says Joseph to Pharaoh, and again, talk about guts, talk about confidence. Behold, 7 years are coming, great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. It's going to be 7 rocking and rolling years, fat cows, healthy, robust ears of grain. Think about it. I mean, cows represent the food. I mean, if you eat meat, right, represents food. And ears of grain certainly represent food. Robust, heavy, thick cows, right? Robust cows, robust ears of grain represent healthy, gesunde Jahren, healthy years, plenty, lots of food. And 7 years of famine, represented by the 7 thin, emaciated cows and the 7 empty grains, ears of grain. 7 years of famine will rise after them. And all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. What does it mean? It'll be forgotten? Forgotten, just like when the thin cows swallowed the thick cows and they didn't get any thicker. So too, the thin years, the years of famine, are going to swallow up the years of plenty, and there won't be any remnant of the plenty. And the famine will destroy the land. The famine will destroy the land, and the plenty will not be known. The previous plenty will not stick around, will not be known because of that famine to follow, for the famine will be very severe. Basically, Joseph is accounting for all the details. The healthy cows, the thin cows, the healthy ears of grain, the thin ears of grain. They're all being accounted for. One is first, the other is second. 7 years of good, 7 years of famine. The famine is going to hit so hard, you won't even remember there were 7 years of good. That's how bad it's going to be. Swallow it up to the point of no remnant of the healthy cows. And concerning the repetition of the dream to Pharaoh twice, why does Pharaoh have 2 dreams? Why do you need a dream about cows and ears of grain? Why not just have one dream? It's the same message anyway in both dreams, so why not just have one dream? So Joseph accounts for this also. That is because the matter is ready to emanate from God, and God is hastening to execute it. Why twice? Because it's happening right now. 7 years of plenty start now. That's why it's repeated twice. It's a wake-up call. If you didn't believe me the first time, I'm going to tell it to you a second time. It's happening. 7 years of plenty, start the clock. 7 years of famine, in 7 years they're going to hit. Start the clock right now. Listen to this. The guts of Joseph continue. So now, says Joseph, let Pharaoh seek out an understanding and wise man and appoint him over the land of Egypt. Talk about creating a job for yourself. Joseph says to Pharaoh, Egypt is in precarious times. Egypt is on the precipice. You need an understanding and wise person to be appointed to oversee this endeavor that I'm about to propose to you. He's literally creating a job for himself. Let Pharaoh do this and appoint officials over the land and prepare the land of Egypt during the 7 years of plenty. Let them collect all the food of these coming good years. Let them gather the grain under Pharaoh's hand, food in the cities, and keep it. In other words, don't spend all the money. I'm kidding. Don't eat all the food in the 7 years of plenty. Save them, store them, preserve them. Open up a savings account. Invest for the long term. Don't spend all, don't get carried away with the good times rolling, because in 7 years, it's all going to come to a crashing end. Collect all the food. Thus, the food will remain as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine, which will be in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not be destroyed by the famine. In other words, listen to this. What Joseph is telling Pharaoh, and really it's a message for us, just because you were told a dream, which is a prophecy, doesn't mean that you cannot avert it. You can change, you can alter the course of destiny by choosing to take action. This is such an important lesson. Just because the divine message is 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine that will destroy all of the benefit of the years of plenty, doesn't mean that you can't work around it. You can't heal it. Of course you can. Save up, store the food, and you'll enjoy it. And it won't be destroyed by the famine. The land won't be destroyed by the famine. If you do it right, in other words, God is telling you this not so that you should be prepared for your demise. No, God is giving you this information to avert the train wreck that's headed your way. Joseph is on fire. The matter pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. So Pharaoh said to his servants, will we find anyone like this? A man in whom there is a spirit of God? Who's like this guy? This guy is unbelievable, he says. This Joseph guy, he's off the hook. And obviously, you know where this is going. Pharaoh says, the job is yours. I don't need to look anywhere else. You're hired. You be in charge of this. You be in charge of the operation of preserving the food and rescuing us from the impending doom of the famine. And Joseph indeed goes ahead with it. I will tell you something, one insight that I wanted to share from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, where he asked the question, where does Joseph make the pivot in verse 33? Like, until now, he's been interpreting the dream. Now he says, by the way, Pharaoh, I think you should appoint someone in charge of, of forestalling this negative thing. Where does he get off saying, I'm telling you what to do? Until now, until verse 33, Joseph was merely interpreting all the points of the dream. Where does he get the chutzpah? I mean, you might say, well, it's chutzpah, but where does he really get the chutzpah to go ahead and start telling Pharaoh what to do, giving him advice? That's not part of the dream. The Rebbe says it is part of the dream. It is part of the dream. Number one, the fact that Pharaoh, you're being told of what's going to happen is because you're in the power to fix it or to stop it from happening, as I said before. But also, number two, the fact of the dream, there's a matter of the dream that otherwise didn't make sense. If you take a look, I'm gonna scroll back to the dreams. If you notice, what happened was the 7 healthy cows came from the Nile, and then 7 other cows ascended after them. And they were at that point standing side by side. Right? Let's go back to the first reading. Maybe it's clear over there. Let's see. Yeah, here. Take a look. Verse 3. So again, verse 2, 7 healthy cows emerged from the Nile. And then verse 3, 7 other cows of ugly appearance, lean of flesh, and they stood beside, this is the key word, stood beside the cows. In other words, at the same time, you had 14 cows. You had the 7 healthy cows right next to the 7 unhealthy cows. And this was not accounted for in the interpretation thus far. And I'll tell you what I mean. According to the interpretation of Joseph, you were going to have 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine, which means that you would have 7 healthy cows. Those would be eliminated. And then you would have the 7 unhealthy cows? Why do we have a moment in time where the 2 sets of cows are standing next to each other? Joseph accounted for this anomaly of the dream as well. Joseph said, why is it that the 7 healthy cows are standing next to the 7 thin cows? If not, that it's a call to action. And the call to action is make sure that when you're enjoying the 7 healthy years, you have in mind right next to it the 7 unhealthy years, the 7 years of famine. In other words, when you're rolling, when you're living large, also have in mind the lean times that are going to come, because live with the lean times as you're living with the healthy times. And then when you have the lean times, you'll be able to live off of the healthy times that you preserved. In other words, make sure that when everything is good, you're living with the reality that everything at some point won't be good. And then when it's not so good, you'll be able to live with that which is good, which you saved, which you preserved. It's a message not only for famines in Egypt, it's a message in life. And that is sometimes everything's going well, but it doesn't mean we can take our eye off the prize. We still have to develop our relationships, both our physical relationships as well as our spiritual relationships with God. It's a time to cultivate all of the gifts that we have and not take them for granted, because there will come a point in time when things won't be as good and we won't be as positive and excited, and we'll need to lean on to those reserves, to those relationships and other emotional tools that we've developed during the years of plenty, so to speak. So that's a little bit of an insight into Joseph's interpretation of the dreams, and where he was able to, how he was able to kind of stand up and proclaim that to Pharaoh. All right, that takes us to the end of today's conversation and what I wanted to share today. We're just getting rolling with the Joseph Viceroy story, so stay tuned as we continue the next few days. Well, really this week. All right, questions or comments on Mikates? Who's got it? Questions, comments. Mark, any Rashis that you know?
I was just unmuting myself. One thing which Rashi points out, talked about the cows, a beautiful appearance. Or did you already say this? Because came in late. That not only was it days of abundance, but it's when people appear nice to one another.
Interesting. No, I didn't mention that. No, I didn't mention that.
It says for people are not miserly toward one another. And in Bereshit Rabbah, the note on that says literally, for a creature's eye is not narrow toward its fellow.
Huh. Interesting. That is interesting. Very cool. I like it. Yeah. In other words, when giving, we should give with an openness and not with a arrow. It's funny you mentioned that, because Chabad in town and IJA also happens to be running. We didn't set this up, by the way, although you might think we did. Running a action campaign today. This is our annual end of year fundraiser. I know, Mark, you have a team set up for fundraising. I'm going to put in the chat box a link to the IJA, the official IJA page, but give wherever the giving is good. So there's no shortage of opportunities to give or teams to give to. So give and give again. And like Mark said, we always give with a broader approach as opposed to the opposite. And please God, may our giving be paid back in abundance, in abundant measure. All right. So thank you, Mark, for sharing that insight. One thing that I'll mention is that as we read the story of Joseph, it's important to remember that he always attributes his success to God. It's very interesting. He never takes his eye off the ball. He never, for a moment is caught up in his own success. He's not like, yes, I got this, Pharaoh. I'm the dream interpreter. You got the right guy. Joseph'sDreamInterpretations.com. No. Pharaoh calls him up, and he knows that Pharaoh is not a monotheist. He knows that Pharaoh is not an Abraham follower, a Hebrew. And what does he say? Hashem is the one who interprets dreams. He puts his cards on the table. He never sells out, even when he's standing in front of Pharaoh. That's impressive, because when you stand in front of Pharaoh, when you have these lucrative opportunities, it's easy to sell out. Joseph never sells out. He always is proud of who he is. All right, so I want to end up with that. Let's be proud. Let's take the story of Hanukkah, the pride, Jewish pride, Maccabean pride, Hasmonean pride, 2020 pride, whatever it is. Be proud of who we are, and rock the world with light. All right, happy Hanukkah, everybody. We'll see you in the morrow. Take care, everybody.
Happy Hanukkah.
Sei gesund. Take care. Donna, good luck with everything. Ray, good to see you. All right. See you all soon.